And then sometimes I want to go for auditions and they're like, I think you better not go. Because they say in a very nice way, they say, 你状况不是很好. That got me really obsessed with my weight. And that got me, okay, I'm going to be thin and thinner and thinner. And then I'll ask them things like, 我要多瘦. They say, 越瘦越好. And that was where, instead of coming back with some acting award, I came home with a very bad eating disorder.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Real Deal. Today we're here with Cheryl Wee.
Hi.
Cheryl Wee, known in Singapore for many, many things. Previously, people may know you for acting, for modeling, for even singing for a while. You are also the daughter of a very famous name in Singapore, Jean Yip. So let's talk about all of that, okay? Because it's been quite a life that you've had. Firstly, when you were growing up, right? I recall you following your parents around to all these salons that would eventually become the Jean Yip empire. So what do you remember from that time in your childhood?
So my mom is a really hardworking person, and we have this rule at home, or rather she has this rule, she would give us about 2 weeks of, during a school holiday of pure break. And after that, she would want us to go to work. It was either follow her to work, or I could stay at home and be like my sister, because my sister loved doing assessment books. And I said, no, definitely not for me. I never really wanted to study. So I followed her to work. So at 9 years old, I followed her to Parkway Parade, level 5. So we had 3 units there. That's hair and beauty. And I would be at the hair salon learning how to collect money, answer phone calls, do settlement. And that was, I would say, the beginning of my career. I even remembered at some point of time, I was going through the cards and was saying like, Mama, I think we should be calling these customers who haven't been here for a while. I was really involved in it.
So you're doing business development at the age of 9?
Okay, I just felt purposeful at that point of time because I really didn't like studying. I loved watching TV, going for ballet, and that's it. But on a regular basis, what do I have? So I really look forward to the holidays where I can follow my parents to work. And also, I guess, maybe in some sense, it's to spend time with my parents, right? I mean, my mom, being who she is, she didn't have much of a choice, and she worked 7 days a week.
What do you mean when you say she didn't have much of a choice?
Essentially, their family got chased out of their house at a very young age, and my mom had to learn very quickly to support the family. And she always had this thing in her that she really has to work hard to put food on the table. Her siblings, like my auntie and uncle, why I think they love each other so much is because they've gone through this hardship together. And my mom, because she was the breadwinner, right? So she was working to help the whole family.
Wow. So Jean Yip, most of us know it as like the name brand, right? Jean Yip, and we've known it for decades now. How did that become such a huge thing in Singapore?
This question I think you should ask my mom. But never mind, I'll try to answer on her behalf. My mom actually really started with one shop, and very shortly she pulled my dad in. I think why she was very popular was because, number one, she was London trained, and there were not many London trained hairstylists then. I think she's really talented at what she do, to be honest. Like, until today, my hair has never been cut by anybody except my father and my mom.
Wow.
Yeah, my kids are only cut by my mom and dad.
This current hairstyle right now is your mom?
My dad.
Your dad?
And I think the power of the family and the power of having one goal, one dream. And at that point of time, Singapore was also in the growing years, in the 80s, in the 90s, and there were lots of opportunities. I remember her, she was so excited. We were opening up the first Jean Yip hub at Plaza Singapura, Capital Land, when expanding so many outlets. And because she had that relationship and she was good at what she was doing and we have good reputation, people were like, hey, we want you in our mall. And she had that vision. She said, I want a Jean Yip in every MRT stop.
Wow.
She wanted to make Jean Yip convenient for people. And she wanted to offer quality service, affordable, good pricing. They are really strong actually at our heartland areas. Actually, Jean Yip really grew because we started with the roots of the grounds, really, the people of Singapore, the heartlands.
When you are a young girl and at that very impressionable age, you see your family essentially earning money off selling people beauty standards,
Yeah.
right? When you're a young girl, did that affect the way you felt about your image in any way?
No, not at all. True, on the surface, it might seem like it's a very superficial industry. My mom has always had the mission. That's why the mission is to beautify the world with beautiful people. And she's always wanting to make people like look good and feel good, because when they look good, naturally they are more confident, And it actually didn't hit me until what happened was I grew plump from the ages of 10 or 11, or when puberty hit, so 11 until maybe 14. So I was in a girls' school, and this classmate actually said to me, and I remember she's a prefect, and she said, "Wow, Cheryl, your parents in this slimming business, but why are you so fat?" So I've never ever once thought I was fat, to be honest. My whole family loves to eat, and they're very particular about cooking and everything. But it occurred to me that I'm fat. But when an outsider said that to me, and it hit me like, oh, because she drew that link, like, your mother's in this business, why are you so fat? And she added one statement, also it doesn't work lah.
Ah.
Yeah, and then it was like, it really hit me.
You now have this new thought about yourself, and then you go home. What happens with this new thought?
So my mom actually also, she shared her concerns of my image, because I think at that point of time I was very sloppy. Like, my hair was wet, and I was like just wearing sloppy clothes. And my mom's very particular, because to her, I think how you present yourself is very important. But you never saw that need. And I mean, as 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, what's so important about that? So when she shared that concern with me, I think I didn't take it as harsh, but I think it definitely left a scar. That was the beginning of what was to come.
Okay, so we have a photo from that time. Maybe we can have a look at what
Yes.
you're talking about. What do you remember thinking about yourself at that time? What about this body?
I didn't think anything.
Oh.
The only thing I thought is like, oh, I love to eat. I definitely wasn't popular in school. But I also didn't have many friends. And I think that hurt me a lot. And I feel that maybe I didn't have somebody really to talk to at that point of time, or I didn't know who I could reach out to. I didn't know what's happening with me. But being the older sister, I felt that I had to have the mask and be strong, because my younger sister, I don't want to be weak for her, So I never shared this part out, I think. And I don't think I shared this part with my parents, because I didn't want to burden them with my issues of like, nobody want to eat me during recess. And any 9, 10, 11-year-old, or any age at now, this point of time, that rejection, you feel hurt. At home, I'm safe. That's why I always like to be at home, because I don't have to face all this. So yeah, I think that's where all the hurt and vulnerability came, and turning to food for that.
Yeah, I can imagine. That happens when you're in quite a vulnerable state of life, puberty and a young teenager and all that. And then years pass, and you decide to start pursuing a career in art and entertainment.
Yes.
So you're doing music for a bit, you're doing pageants even, you're doing modeling and TV shows. So when you were going through all these things, right? Firstly, where did the passion come from? Because when you were young, you wanted to run a business, right? So why suddenly an artist?
Actually, the passion of performing came way before I was that size. I actually that's the first love I knew. I asked my aunt, because my aunt, so Dawn, she was a singer. She'll bring me to ballet school. In fact, I shared with her like, Auntie, I want to learn ballet, and I want to learn this, I want to learn that. And I just wanted to be like her. As young as 4 years old, I'll tell her how I will choreograph her performance. Like, I say, Auntie, you must end it off like this, like that. And at K2, I told my parents and Auntie Dawn, I want to perform for a D&D. And I know there's going to be a lot of people, and I'm not going to be scared. And I can still remember that image so vividly. It was at Google Park Hotel. I was on the stage wearing a green, like bell-bottom, retro-looking outfit, and it was performing to a song One for Money, Two for the Show by Elvis Presley. I would choreograph all that dance. I think it's just in me. Like, that was my happy zone.
Yeah.
At 9 years old, when I went to work, I shared with you, it's not that I dislike acting or performing anymore. I still had that in me, but I think when I went to work at my mom's shop, I felt I found something something that I could contribute in and something that I could be good at this. So it's not that I suddenly wanted to be an entrepreneur or business owner at 9 years old. I think I always wanted to be in entertainment for the longest time, but that childhood dream sort of was muted for a bit. After A-levels, I actually applied to New York Broadway Dance Center.
Wow, okay.
I applied without my parents even knowing, but I had to tell them after that because I was going to New York, right? And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to study university because I'm going to pursue this dream. And then my mom was like, you know, I didn't apply for university. She applied for me with my grandfather.
What?
And I was like so angry. I got in. What's happening? So I studied psychology. And I almost actually gave up the dreams of becoming an artist to be a psychologist, because I felt that was really true, meaningful work when you could really help and change somebody's life. Then what happened was one day in uni, my cousin said to me, like, Cheryl, you still want to do this or not? I said, okay lah, I mean, I do, but how, am I too old or not? And she's like, no, at that time, a lot of people were getting into the industry through pageants. In the Hong Kong scene, you would see people like Chen Fala, Bernice, and Christy Chong. And then in Singapore scene, you would see people like Rebecca Lims and Jamie Teo. So she said, Cheryl, just try. I went to Miss Singapore Universe, applied also without my parents knowing. Got in, had to tell them. First time I wore bikini.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, that was it. But one pageant led to another. And the reason I went from one pageant to another is because they gave me the hope that with that pageant, right, the international ones,
Yes.
you can perform. So I tell you, I didn't care about winning or any titles. I just want to be the best in talent so I can perform. My end goal was Taiwan. My end goal was always Taiwan, because I grew up, we watch Liu Xinhua Yuan and all your Chinese dramas, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to be in Taiwan. I mean, I truly appreciate my bosses there and all that, because it really opened my eyes and I got to know the godfathers in this industry. I mean, how many people get a chance to do that? But like you say, it's very harsh. And that was where, instead of coming back with some acting award, I came home with a very bad eating disorder. I was probably maybe 43, 44 kilos. They'll say, 新会你的脸太圆了. And then sometimes I want to go for auditions and they're like, I think you better not go. Because they say in a very nice way, they say, 你状况不是很好. That got me really obsessed with my weight. And that got me, okay, I'm going to be thin and thinner and thinner. And then I'll ask them things like, 我要多瘦. They say, 越瘦越好. I truly believed that I could get thinner. Like, I wanted to be like maybe 39. And that sounds crazy now, but I even created my own diet. I was like, I'm going to do this. So every 2 weeks for 3 days, I don't eat. So every weekend I'm happy because it's cheat day, but yet I know I'm going to be guilty for sure. But I still go through that because I haven't eaten in like how many days. I think I was so empty inside me, and I just don't know what was wrong.
How long were you living like that?
In and out of it, I think a good at least 2 to 3 years, like serious.
That's a long time to be doing that.
Everything was for the wrong reasons. It was for vanity. It was for my own sake, my own pride, my own ego. In the past, I was proving to other people that I'm more than just Jean Yip's daughter. Actually, I didn't have my period for 3 to 4 years. The first year was irregular and then no period for about 3 years, up until the wedding. So when my wedding, actually I had no period one. Yeah.
Because of the way you were eating?
Yeah. I wasn't particularly sad. I just, okay lah, whatever. But I can tell you, it is by God's miracle. He healed me with a pregnancy. It's the first baby in the family and there's so much joy and focus on it. The focus shifted to a life outside of you. And because I learned how important proper nutrition is, I know I'm above and beyond just how I look.
So that actually surprised me, because I would think that, when you're pregnant, your body changes so much. In fact, you gain weight, right?
And it was the first time in my life I was 60 kilos, the heaviest in my life. So 3 times 3 kids. And I never went on another diet, but I'm back at my pre-pregnancy weight. But most importantly, it's not the weight. I don't have to go on a diet. Mentally, I'm so free. Emotionally, I'm happy with who I am. I still want to look good and feel good, but it's no longer just the focus of like being thin to be accepted per se. It's so much more than that.
Wow.
And it's really so liberating.
Yeah, it sounds very freeing.
Yeah.
Freeing, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember earlier on you used the word jailed. You were jailed in your head.
Jailed.
Yeah, it sounds like this really freed you up.
It freed me. And the reason why is because when I was pregnant with my second one, and I started Cheryl W already, I really truly felt that what I went through was for a reason. And the reason is because I now know truly what is my mission in life.
Since you brought up Cheryl W, let's talk about it, right? So context is that Cheryl W, am I right to say it's still part of the Jean Yip umbrella family? Yes. So it's sort of transitioned from being the weight loss, weight management portion of Jean Yip's business, and then you took over that part and now it's become Cheryl W.
So my official appointment started in, I think it was 2010 or 2011 was when the year I graduated. And I already was with artist management, I think, or was looking for artist management. Because, as a aspiring artist, you don't have jobs every day. So you need a full-time job to sustain you, right? I started out at Raffles City. It was a dream outlet there, and I was taking care of the manicure department first.
So you're doing people's nails?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
I started out as a manicurist first.
Is it more expensive if Jean Yip's daughter does your nails or no?
No, I think better I pay them. I was so scared, like, am I going to do this correctly or not? So yeah, I started with that. And then I went on to the different departments. My mom said, okay, Cheryl, since you want to be out of the entertainment industry, I think you should join a family business. And since you're so into nutrition and healthy weight loss, why don't you lead this department? At first I was really reluctant. I was like, no, I don't think this is what I want to do.
Why were you reluctant? Is it more of a business thing or more were you afraid that it's traumatic?
Yeah. I was afraid that I would go back into that state.
Yeah.
I honestly, I would say that I felt that this thing burnt me. I don't want to walk back there. But she's like, no, all the more you have to think of how are you going to do this with integrity. So sometimes, like they say, if you cannot convince yourself, just do first and just trust the process. So maybe she could see something that I couldn't see. I think she was trying to teach me to turn my pain into purpose. I don't know, but I just did and followed. I persevered. The first year was really difficult. I think there were a lot of tears, a lot of struggle. But after the pregnancy, that was my second year into Cheryl W actually, that was everything when everything became clear. And I realized why I needed to go through that, why I needed to lead Cheryl W. It's because it's the perfect setting. I could understand. And every day now, it is not about continuing a family legacy or just being in the beauty industry. I truly stand for something. I'm truly convicted that, yeah, I know how it feels that you want to look good, but I also know how to help you in a way that it's not about another crash diet. It's not about trying to earn your money, it's not about like another weight loss scheme. No, it's a journey.
Wow. Based on your understanding, because you were in that space and you know what is expected of artists, right now, do you think there are people that we see on screen every day who are living like that right now?
I'm sure on screen or in our everyday life, there are people that are experiencing it, people going through body dysmorphic disorders or eating disorders, thinking they're not good enough in all walks of life. I believe, not everybody, but I believe that there are people out there that may resonate and feel the same.
Yeah.
And every generation, people always toggle with this issue. And how do I deal with it in a much more gentler, much more positive way? And my eating disorder was the right setting for me to put me in a space where I understand people with weight issues. And that eating disorder also gave me that very mission in my life.
Yeah. I have so many questions I want to ask you about Company of Wellness, right? That's the new name.
Yes.
Before we move on to that though, can I tell you my honest feelings about something and then you just tell me what you think about this, okay? When I found out that it was your mom that knew that you had a hard time with the way you were eating, she knew and then she suggested that you run this weight management side of the business. When I first found that out, I was a little bit startled because I was wondering why would you do that to someone who has such issues with weight management. What do you think about that decision of hers?
So my mom's from a generation that, now you talk about emotions and depression and like all the stigma or like, feelings. I think she was from a generation that they don't really talk much about it. Like if you fall down, you get bruised, you just wipe it off. Let's go ahead, So to be honest, I don't think that she saw my eating disorder as something very crippling. And she's never like coddled me.
And now in hindsight, do you appreciate her doing that for you?
I do. Sometimes I feel that I don't think parents ever want to put us in a situation of putting us in a difficult place. But I just believe and trust because I know my mom and my mom is a person who wants the best for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. I think you're in a very interesting position to me, right, Cheryl? Because you actually went through these things. You're not talking about this from a bubble. You know the pain of feeling like you are not good enough, you don't look good enough, you're not thin enough, right? And then now you lead a company where you are essentially, many of your customers will probably be coming to you because they maybe feel the same way about themselves. Do you think there is any harm to running a business like this?
I think that's a great question because I think I asked myself this in the beginning. I don't think the nature of the business itself is that per se, to be honest. It is in a state of being very vulnerable. My intention and purpose is very clear that I really want to support and help women out there. In every generation, I think every woman and man wants to look good and feel good, right? But it's just a matter of how they do it. You see, this is the thing. The beauty and the perplexity of this thing is this. The same thing with the right and wrong intention can come out very differently. And that's what I always tell my staff and my team members. Actually, you are not just here as consultants or therapists. To me, you're all counselors. So when I go for my treatments, I do talk to my girls. Like, this week are very difficult. All this auntie can't tell me I'm doing this with my baby wrong. Actually that is therapy. And that is more than the treatment in itself. So that is number one. I think the intention of being there to support somebody, that's very important.
Yeah. And now you're at such an interesting time in your life because from what I understand, not today, but just recently.
Yeah, very recently.
Very recently, you are going to be signed to an artist management agency again.
Yeah.
So that's now come back into your life. How are you feeling about that?
I'm really excited because I think there's this thing that it's been there knocking at me for a while now. I think it's never really left, I told you. I think it's just this passion, this interest. But I go in now with no expectations. And I go in now that whatever will be, will be. And whatever opportunities that I'm presented with, let's just go with the flow.
And now it seems like a very different place and I'm so happy to hear it. So right now your mom, you have this wonderful family. My sense is that your mom, Jean Yip, she's such a big name to Singaporeans. For you, it's mom, right? And I can hear from your story that she has been so important at so many parts, right? Really, really her guidance, almost like her suggestions, her guidance, her advice, has really shifted your life path in many ways. So when you think about her doing that in your life, I don't know, what comes up for you?
I'm honestly very, very grateful to my parents because I won't be where I am without them. I hear stories of how my mom struggled and pulled through and how she is self-made. And I'm so proud of her because it's not easy. In the next generation, I hope that I can lead this group of people or the next group of people with her heart because she's not just another boss. She gave them a family. I mean, my dad, my aunt, my uncles, I think they made me into who I am today. I think she's my role model in a lot of ways because not because she's the most perfect person. I'm saying this because she's my boss, or she's my mom, but I must say that I've come a long way. I want to say that I'm really proud to be Jean Yip's daughter. In the past, I'd be like, no, just know me as Cheryl Wee. No, I want to, be out the shadow. I think they've done great works. I'm proud. And I don't think it's about to prove myself. I'm Jean Yip's daughter, but I'm also Cheryl Wee. As a mom, a wife, a child of God, entrepreneur. I mean, there's so many roles, right? But yeah, I'm also Jane's daughter.
Yeah. What do you think the legacy is that Jean Yip, by extension also Cheryl W, what do you think the footprint is that's being left in Singapore right now?
I hope that the legacy and footprint would be, as our mission is, to really beautify the world with beautiful people. And I think it really is from inside out. That's why I say nutrition from within. I say emotionally, I say mentally, I say spiritually. I think inside out, when that intention and that beauty inside is pure and good and right, I think it comes out as well.
Nice. Really eager to see what you do with this next chapter.
Me too, because I don't know one. I have no idea. I have no expectations whatsoever. We'll see what happens.
Bikini again or no?
No.